Skeptic's cred, here you go.
And initially, the society was involved primarily in promoting the teaching of evolution or countering creationist attacks on the teaching of evolution. But I think it was 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, you've expanded also into climate change denial.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because of the parallels.
Which I agree.
Teachers get hammered for teaching evolution. They get hammered for teaching climate change. We know about hammering teachers and helping them, so we thought we could help.
So you were involved with the whole Kitzmiller case. Tell us about that.
Yes.
Give us the broad brushstrokes and then tell us some of the funny stories about it.
Well, of course, one of the things that NCSE always does is work grassroots. So we had been following Dover since 2004 because they had a couple of flare-ups back then, even before the whole big intelligent design thing hit, because there was school board members who really had a burr under their saddle about teaching creationism, and they really wanted to do it. And so we had contacts in the community, and when the school board actually it was late 2004, started making very bad noises about introducing these policies, buying these textbooks and stuff, we were in contact with citizens in the community. And then things kind of went from bad to worse. We were advising some of the citizens, some of the parents there in the community, and the school board was just totally recalcitrant. They just would not cooperate, would not compromise. The teachers were really great, but they couldn't get any traction. Push came to shove, and Americans United for Separation of Church and State was contacted for a possible lawsuit. We have, Americans United, not People For. We have AU lawyers who are members of our legal advisory committee, so we've worked with these guys for years. We worked together to build a legal team, to build the expert witnesses. It was a real cooperative endeavor from the get-go between the ACLU, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the civil liberties groups, the big law firm in Philadelphia, Pepper Hamilton, where we also, of course, had legal advisory committee members, and NCSE. That was the legal team. So we were there from the beginning and followed it through to the end. It was exhausting.
Yeah, but worth it. I mean, it really was a landmark.
No question.
Even though, so this was at the federal district level, right?
Correct.
Didn't go to the Supreme Court, but that's still the precedent, right? That's still unless there's a Supreme Court decision to overrule it, that still holds, doesn't it?
No. The issue of precedence is a legal thing.
Yeah.
It is precedent in the Middle District of Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay, so just in the district.
That is the way precedent works at the district court level. If it had gone to the appeals court, then it would have been precedent in that appeals district. If it had gone to the Supremes, then it would have been precedent across the nation. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, when the decision came down, it was just such a crushing decision that there really was no more spirit left to pursue it. Mm-hmm. Very important things had happened the fall before. This all took place during the calendar year 2005. And the decision came down in December of 2005. But in November of 2005, there had been an election, and basically all the rascals were thrown out. Mm-hmm. The school board almost totally turned over, and the new school board really was not interested in an appeal. I mean, they got elected because they disagreed with the old school board, right? So there was not going to be an appeal. Nobody had standing other than the school board to have an appeal, and so that was the end of the story. But even without Kitzmiller being on appeal, even if it never went beyond the district court level, it is such a powerful decision that the repercussions of that decision have just rippled. Mm-hmm. We knew of school districts around the country, and we knew, I still say we, but NCSE tracks state legislation and the rest. Let me know when we're going to, because I can give you all this background stuff, and we'll just repeat it on air if you want. But as soon as you give me that up,
we are on air.
We are on air?
Yeah, by the way, we're on air.
Hi, everyone.
I was wondering.
I thought we were just doing background
No,
stuff.
that we're live, and once you're in the studio, you're on air. The previous connection was to check it.
So,
but
Jeannie,
you're doing fine. Don't worry.
Are you now
right.
scrolling through everything you said, going, "Did I say something ridiculous?"
I often do that, actually. Say things ridiculous, but there's no charge to second guessing. Well, then to finish the thought, since I was in the middle of it. Heck, I could have given you a whole lot more background on Kitzmiller if I knew we were live. That's funny. But we NCSE tracks stuff like this, and we knew of a lot of states, we knew of a lot of school districts where people were just poised to introduce Dover-like policies. They were poised to introduce legislation that would require the teaching of intelligent design. But Judge Jones's decision was just so solid that everybody just sort of said, well, forget that. We're not going to be able to sneak intelligent design in there by law, de jure.
Right. And Judge Jones was appointed by George W. Bush, is that correct?
Oh, yeah. He was a Republican politician in the state of Pennsylvania. Had run for state office, protege of the senator there. I mean, he's a card-carrying Republican.
Yep.
He's also a very squared-away judge, and he listened to all of the arguments on both sides. And basically, the job that our legal team did was fabulous. I mean, they just put it away. They demonstrated that intelligent design was wrong in what fact claims it made. So why would you want to teach kids stuff that's wrong? Okay, it doesn't belong in the classroom because it's just wrong stuff. You don't teach kids the earth is flat, whether it's legal or not. Intelligent design is not really science. We managed to demonstrate that too. It ultimately relies upon supernatural intervention, which is untestable and therefore outside of science. Why would you want to teach kids stuff as science that isn't really science? And what was kind of extra fun about that, just for the Kitzmiller fans out there, is that both the defense and both sides, the intelligent design side and our side, agreed on the definition of science. That science has to be restricted to material causes. So if you go outside of material causes,
that's the game right there.
Yeah,
right?
How else? What other kinds of causes can you test? God, stay in the test tube. It doesn't work that way.
No.
So they both sides agreed, yeah, this is how science is. But the other guys were saying, yes, but we want to change science so it's broader and more inclusive. And of course, that goes over like a ton of bricks in the science community. That's ripping a hole in your net. It's not improving things.
Jeannie,
So
where did the
things
funds,
improved a lot.
Where did the funds for this legal defense come from?
They were picked up by Pepper Hamilton, which spent a lot of money on this trial.
Now, what was their interest? What was their...
Pure pro bono.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
There's things that I think people don't realize about the legal profession. Legal profession gets beat up a lot, but it's a very important part of our culture. And one of the ethical stances of the legal profession is that as an individual lawyer and certainly as firms, you are expected to donate a certain percentage of your time, 5 or 10%, to good works, pro bono. And when we approached, actually, it's kind of a fun story. I was starting to tell about how NCSE got involved in this case. When the citizens in the community decided that they wanted to sue, I sent a note around to the legal advisor. Well, actually, excuse me. Precedent to that. I got a telephone call from Vic Volchek, who is the Pennsylvania director of the ACLU, with whom I'd worked back in the 90s on some cases in there. And he said, hey, we're going to need you guys again. I said, we'll help. I said, do you have a law firm to work with? Because generally the ACLU doesn't do their own cases. They have excellent lawyers, but they don't have deep pockets. And the ACLU always partners, or huge percentage of the time, with a commercial law firm which does have pockets and then donates resources of various kinds, including oftentimes lawyers. So he said, no, don't have one yet. I said, well, let me write my legal advisory committee, because I know we have a guy in in Pennsylvania who would probably be interested in this. But I'm going to say everybody on the committee. I won't just pick on him, because even if he's too busy to do it, the other committee members, they belong to firms, and they probably have some relationship with firms. And let me see what I can do. It's fine. So I crafted this very careful note about how here's what's happening in Dover. Here's some links. ACLU is looking for somebody to partner with. Can anybody help? Sent it out in the morning. Within, couldn't have been more than an hour, I got a phone call from Eric Rothschild from Pepper Hamilton saying, "Don't do anything." He said, "I've been waiting for this for 15 years. Wow. He said, "I'm going to take this to our pro bono committee tomorrow. Don't accept anybody's offer until you hear from me." He was really excited. It was so great. So the next day he called back and said, "We are in." He said, and which I hadn't quite appreciated the significance of this until the case went on. He said, "We are in, and we have the support of the whole firm."
Wow.
That's right.
Which is huge, which basically said, we will do what it takes to get this case done. Now, the other thing that was really super significant about Pepper Hamilton's involvement in this is that it wasn't just the new associates. When you look at these pro bono cases that, ACLU or anybody else, helping some local nonprofit, which a lot of law firms do, usually it's the young associates because, heck,
Right.
they're going to be having to do insurance law the rest of their life. And this at least makes them feel good because they're doing something helpful and useful. In Pepper, the situation was not, we had one junior associate. All the other people from Pepper, the other 4 lawyers who worked with us from Pepper Hamilton, were all partners, which is
They're the big
huge.
guns.
Wow. That's
Yeah, which is
encouraging.
huge.
That's exciting. Wow.
And the reasons were very interesting as well. None of these guys were First Amendment lawyers, but they could all hum a few bars. But, we had the ACLU and we had Americans United who really do know their Amendment law solidly. So we had a very strong legal team. But even if they weren't specializing in this constitutional field, all of these Pepper Hamilton guys really cared profoundly about church and state separation. They were people of faith. They didn't want somebody else's religion taught to their kids in the public schools. They believed that religion is a personal matter, not a matter of the state, and it should be just kept the hell out of the classroom. And that was the big motivating feature for them.
Yeah.
So it was a fabulous experience working with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, historically, the whole notion of separation of church and state was first put forward by the religious people to keep the state out of their religion.
Right.
That was the
like
really
a
the
plan.
big. And then in doing so, it goes hand in hand with keeping religion out of the government as well. You can't really have one without the other. So, but that was not the primary concern. When it was first really promoted in the United States, at least.
Well, the more I think about and the more I use the First Amendment, the more impressed I am. When you look at the religion section of the First Amendment, I mean, First Amendment is religion, speech, and assembly. But just looking at the religion part, you've got the Free Exercise Clause and you've got the Establishment Clause. Now, what we were working on with Kitzmiller and all the other creation and evolution cases is the Establishment Clause, having to do with the state imposing religious views upon the community or public institutions. But the Free Exercise Clause is also an incredibly powerful part of our Constitution because it says you can worship any way you want or not at all, and you have every right to express your views in these matters. So the lovely thing when you look at the Establishment Clause that limits the state and the Free Exercise Clause that frees the individual, so to speak, you have a recipe for neutrality of the state toward religion, which is what you guys were saying. It's the sort of thing that really does protect both the state and individuals for the kind of freedom of thought that we really value in the United States. But it's a brilliant document. Many other countries have adapted it wish more would, but there you have it.
Yeah. But still, creationists in some parts of the country are sneaking creationism into the public schools. Even if they're not passing laws to do it, they're just doing it. I mean, as far as we could tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get reports from time to time about teachers bringing creationist materials in. One of the reasons we're so concerned about the what are called the Academic Freedom Acts that have been popping up around the country throughout the last decade or so, is this is a backdoor form of creationism. Mm-hmm. Couched, of course, in terms of freedom of a teacher to bring all views into the classroom. Mm-hmm. The world is flat and the world is spherical. We can bring all views. But, of course, that is a very user-friendly kind of framing. And so most Americans would be more than happy to encourage critical thinking among their children. This is a good thing to do, but, of course, this is the wrong way to go about it.
That's similar to like saying, "Oh, I'm just asking questions." You know, so all I'm doing is just asking questions. No, you're actually bringing up ridiculous points that are not founded on science.
Well, as somebody who is a recovering college professor herself, ridiculous points aren't necessarily something that you want to discourage, but you do want to guide people to the more accurate understanding of a phenomenon anyway. There are some dumb questions, but not many. But these Academic Freedom Acts are kind of scary because the most successful of them is the Louisiana Act, which was then cloned in Tennessee, and we've got two of these numbers that have passed. There have been probably 70 or more of these bills that have been proposed, and only 2 have passed, which is not a bad ratio, but that's still too many. But the Louisiana law is scary because it has to do with the freedom, if you will, to bring in instructional materials without really adequate supervision. And that can allow a lot of really bad stuff to come in. Mm-hmm. Now, in general, both the traditional creationists and the intelligent design proponents have kind of figured it out that they can't be too blatant about teaching straight-up creationism. They've been smacked down by the courts so many times. They're better than one trial learners. They're not going to do that. But what they will do is attack evolution. And that's kind of like one step off, but it has the same effect. Most students, most Americans, are thinking dichotomously. They're thinking it's either creation or it's evolution. So therefore, if you just disprove evolution, well, guess who wins by default, right? Mm-hmm. So the whole idea of the Academic Freedom Acts and similar movements recently is to try to get materials into the classroom, try to get teachers to teach to students, well, here's what the textbook says about evolution, but really it's crappy science, and really you shouldn't accept it. Because once you eliminate evolution from that false dichotomy, if you will, then students will just pretty naturally fall into, oh, well, then if evolution didn't do it, God must have gone poof. Mm-hmm. And so you get creationism through the back door by weakening the understanding of the science and falsely teaching students that scientists are debating whether or not evolution took place. So it's very, very clever. It never mentions religion. Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound like it's a religious position. And frankly, none of us are terribly anxious for the next Kitzmiller, which is going to be over an Academic Freedom Act of some sort, because you're not guaranteed to get a judge like Jones, mm-hmm. That's right. Jones was willing to look at the whole history of this creation and evolution controversy and really understand why intelligent design was just kind of a reframing of traditional creation science. Of course, it didn't hurt that we were loaded for bear with all of those copies of Pandas and People showing the evolution of the phrase creationism to intelligent design, and the legal team did a fabulous job, and that includes NCSE's staff. They really did great.
Yeah. The freedom laws are strategically identical to healthcare freedom laws, where which are also passed in quite a number of states, which essentially eliminate the standard of care. And like an academic freedom law, it's trying to eliminate the academic standard. It's saying freedom trumps whatever mechanism you're using to have some kind of scholarly, intellectual, science-based standard. Once the standard is gone, then you could get anything goes, right? Which is what they want. They want to be able to, it's a backdoor policy for creationism on one hand, for snake oil on the other, both normally kept out by some kind of academic standard of quality of science.
I think that's a wonderful insight, and I knew nothing about that. You've just given me some really great stuff to think about. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening in the educational world. I mean, look, who knows the most about how to teach math? Math teachers. Who knows the most about what is considered the standard mathematical theory on X, Y, or Z, no pun intended? Mathematicians. So teachers and mathematicians should be the ones with the strongest authority for establishing math curriculum. This is a no-brainer. Well, similarly with science teachers and scientists. But what's happening is you're getting this kind of devolvement to the public will. We, the public, are going to determine what's going to be taught, regardless of what those experts say. And I think what you are describing is a similar thing, kind of a reduction of standards in the medical profession.
And it's an attack on experts and expertise. It's a populist attack trying to characterize expertise as elitist. And that's, again, it's an easy sell to make when you don't scratch too far below the surface. But and we talk about this a lot, like on the show, the fact that it's easy to dismiss experts, in a lot of these scientific fields. But then you ask, okay, if you have a plumbing problem, is it elitist to insist on having a certified plumber, look at your plumbing, or we want somebody, your next door neighbor, to work on your plumbing for you? So that people kind of understand that you want a mechanic working on your car, and you want a plumber working on your plumbing, and you probably want to hire a lawyer, if you need expert legal advice.
What's that line? It's always like, because if you want surgery, if you want open heart surgery, you're going to go to an open heart surgeon. But if you have a chest pain or you might have that quack kind
you can go to a guru.
Like, what's that line? Like, where people decide, no one's going to have a homeopathic carpenter build them a vanity. Because you can't. I mean, it would work or it wouldn't work.
I think it's how accessible are the skills. People understand.
I agree. I think people are more than happy to accept expertise. Where you run into problems is when the expert, or the subject area that you're concerned about, comes up against very strongly held values or ideologies that will trump empirical evidence.
Yeah, but
and this is true of every single one of us.
That's the motivation. I agree. That's motivated reasoning, and that's lots of studies now showing that that's actually the case. But that leads them to the strategy of rejecting expertise in that one instance. But of course, they're making a more general argument in doing so, right? But then you have to then say, well, if you're going to reject the expertise of climate change or of evolution, then why aren't you rejecting the expertise of every expert that's out there, mathematicians and plumbers and lawyers?
But that's actually not what is happening, because people have a cafeteria style rejection. I'm rejecting this science because if this science is right, I lose big.
No, I agree.
I'm going to reject evolution because if evolution is true, I lose big. I lose a whole bunch of stuff. So evolution can't be right, but boy, heart surgery sure is great.
I agree with you. My point is that they're being hypocritical, that they are using the cafeteria style. But you can sort of it's never going to have an effect to somebody who's a true believer, but you can sort of catch them in their own internal inconsistency.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's like, well, you feel like you know enough to reject the scientific consensus on climate change. Why would you reject the scientific consensus on something that's not controversial?
Car repair.
So they're just they're
bridge building.
Absolutely. No, I mean, this is not an illogical position for somebody.
Yeah.
You might view it as inconsistent, but look at it from their standpoint. Their standpoint is that here's a whole bunch of science. I like science. That Pew study that I started rattling about demonstrates that. American public thinks science is great. And we love that grandma has a new hip and she's bowling. And it's not irrational. Maybe that science is bad. We all know a whole bunch of things that are claimed as science that are bad.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying to us, well, you reject Bigfoot, but you accept climate change. Why don't you accept the evidence for Bigfoot? Well, then you can go on and on. But the basic point is that people, the motivated reasoning, people have reasons for rejecting certain sciences that have nothing to do with the value of the empirical evidence. From my standpoint, And I have no surveys to show this, but I have, for what it's worth, an awful lot of idiosyncratic experience in this kind of thing. The only effective way of dealing with that is to assuage those underlying emotional / ideological concerns. And the best way to do that is to have someone who does accept the same science that mainstream does, but who also comes from the same particular ideological tradition of the rejecter. So if you're a libertarian and you don't like climate change, let me find you a libertarian who understands the science and accepts climate change, but is looking at a different solution perhaps that might come from a libertarian perspective. And you guys go talk. Right. If you're a conservative Christian and you find it really hard to accept evolution, I've got some evangelical Christians I'd like to introduce you to who have managed to assuage their religious concerns. Assuage is the wrong word. They have managed to integrate their religious views with the science, and they don't find that they have to jettison the one to accept the other. Why don't you guys talk and work this out?
That matches current research
much more
as well.
effectively than just shoveling science at it.
Yeah. Like trying to change the minds of your teenage kid. It's their peers that are going to change their mind, not the parent authority figure, right? I mean,
it's the people who are like you. Who do you trust? And you trust the people who are like you. I'm a non-believer. I don't have a lot of credibility generically in the conservative Christian community. I have many conservative Christian friends who know me, like me, don't think I'm a bad person, whatever. Maybe I am, but they've fooled them long enough. But generically speaking, it's going to be another conservative Christian who is going to be better able to carry the message that you don't. There are ways to accommodate religious, even conservative religious beliefs, to make them compatible with what we know from science.
It's also people you respect, too, I think.
Same thing with Republicans and climate change.
Right. So you're saying that this as a strategy, you would want to find these people and help them educate the people that have similar beliefs that they have?
Well, this is something that we've encouraged all along. We've tried to be very supportive, just taking the evolution issue, for example, with which NCSE has had a lot more history. We've been supportive all along of evangelical Christian groups that are moderate in their views, like the American Scientific Affiliation, which is a mixed group, many of whom are theistic evolutionists. Virtually none, a tiny percent would be young Earth creationists, and a small percent are maybe still hanging on to intelligent design. But these are men and women who have graduate degrees in science. For the most part, they accept the science, and there is an ongoing discussion among serious conservative Christians as to, what can you stretch? But if you know anything about the history of religion at all, religion evolves if nothing else does. And the changes that have taken place in American Protestantism, including the early 20th century evangelical and, well, actually not evangelical, but the early 20th century fundamentalist and other even more conservative sect revolutions have profoundly changed the face of American Christianity in ways that you don't find in European Christianity. And now, of course, there's a tremendous amount of missionizing going on internationally, including in the former Soviet Union and including in former Catholic strongholds like Central and South America. So where, conservative Protestants are really gaining very great ground. So it behooves us all to understand these movements, but it also behooves the believers in these various denominations and groups to appreciate that theirs is a living tradition, and there are going to be changes that take place. And I have seen, I've seen very sincere religious scientists trying very hard to help their fellow believers to not reject science, because the science is very important to them, just as it's important to every other scientist.
Jeannie, go ahead.
No, among your myriad of accomplishments, do you think that the Dover case is sort of amongst the top for what you've achieved in your tenure?
I would say so. Yeah, it's been. I directed the NCSE for a really long time, and there's lots and lots and lots of little successes, and many individual school districts and individual teachers that it's been very gratifying to have helped them out over the years, most of which nobody ever hears about because it's the kind of social thing that we do. But Kitzmiller was a biggie. Kitzmiller was really, really important, and it's something that I think NCSC and the other legal team members are very proud of, because we worked our little collective butts off. And having reunions every fall, the legal team gets together with the plaintiffs, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful party. Actually, I'll be participating in that in November. If anybody's around Dover, Pennsylvania in the early part of November, Ken Miller and I are going to be doing some public talks at the community college there, and then we'll be doing a teachers workshop that'll be for local teachers. And then we'll just have a big party at Lori Lebos.
And Jeannie, you have an event coming up in California, right? A skeptical event.
We do.
How did I know?
The Sacramento area skeptics and the Bay Area skeptics are two Northern California regional groups. We got together, it'll be 6 years ago now, and sponsored Skeptical, which is a one-day, it's not nearly as fancy as the stuff you guys put on back east. It's a one-day science and critical thinking, science and skepticism conference. It's going to be held on Saturday, June 6th. We keep the cost way down, because we want people to come. We want it to be an occasion for skeptics to get together and, not find restrictions for travel and money. We draw from local talent. Of course, the Bay Area is full of really, from here to Sacramento to Santa Barbara, we've got Santa Cruz. We've got lots of great science and science communication people. Natalie Batal is going to be speaking, the astronomer. She's terrific. You hear her on NPR about every other day, it seems to me. John Ioannidis, the guy who wrote the articles on why it seems that all of our scientific research gets overturned eventually. Of course, that's not what happens, but he's a very thoughtful guy, talking about the way we do science may not be the most effective way that we do science, and he's going to be really interesting to talk about. And the new director of NCSC, Ann Reed, is going to be talking. Her specialty is viruses. When she was a bench scientist, she was part of the team that, co-PI, of the team that sequenced the 1918 flu virus. Wow. So, vaccines have been in the news, Ebola's been in the news, viruses are scary things. Oh my, what do we... So she's going to kind of pour a little oil on those troubled waters and help people understand what it is you should be afraid of with viruses and what things are probably okay. So we've got great breakouts. We've got great plenary speakers. So if you're any place in the western part of the U.S. and you want a good excuse to come to the Bay Area, Skeptical.
That's a good excuse.
Don't miss it.
You also have a ton of awesome people in your local community that we've gotten to know. I have one of them in the room with us right now, by the way.
Who's that?
Philip Hudson. You might not know Phil, but he lives out in your area, and he's one of our people. We love him.
Filmmaker.
Well, hello, Phil.
Yeah.
I hope you've got your ticket to Skeptical.
Yeah. Jeannie, thanks for joining us.
Can I ask the window question?
Let me give the URL.
Oh, URL.
If you go to skepticalcon.org, please. Skepticalcon.org.
Nice.
Okay?
Before you go, we had a question earlier. If you could have any view out of your bedroom window, what would you have? Anything in the world, present, past, anything. What would you choose?
I wouldn't mind looking over the Grand Canyon.
Good answer.
That's a pretty special place to me.
Excellent.
And I'm going to miss it this year, but they tell me that it'll be there next year as long as there isn't a flood between now and then.
God
so
will.
I'm going to get back to it.
Be sure to tell Sheldon his hair looks fantastic.
Yes, always.
Sheldon's hair always looks
I think Sheldon's hair is actually sentient.
I think it is sentient.
It may very be another person.
I think the body is actually not. I think Sheldon is.
That's not
the hair is wearing the body.
Sheldon's a parasite. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We are all envious of Sheldon's hair, and Sheldon's energy and enthusiasm as well is pretty hard to beat.
He is awesome to work with. I love him.
All right. Thank you, Jeannie. Thanks for being our first guest.
Yes, thank you so much.
Happy marathon, guys.
Thank you
so
much.
much.
Jeannie.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that worked.
Yeah, that was well. That was great.
That was good.
I actually could hear her, which was amazing.
She is so awesome.
Oh, God.
I mean, that word gets thrown around so much, but
Not enough.
Everything is awesome.
seriously, yeah. Jeannie is so awesome.
Well, she's got it on tap.
Awesome sauce.
She speaks in perfectly understandable sound bites. I'm always fascinated when she's talking.
Oh, she knows her material.
Yeah.
I mean,
She knows the
she's
material.
been
Is
doing this so
lovely.
long.
Is always prepared. Her talks are always interesting.
Evan, a question has come up
Yes.
on our Twitter feed. And,
Okay.
somebody wants to know, Evan, why is Megan Fox stupid? Apparently, they think you have the answer.
Oh, this is from the New Zealand show.
Yes, which went up today.
Yeah, that's right. Megan's big into the woo, shall we say? Let's see, ghost psychics, all that good stuff. Also, she has a bit of a gap in her knowledge of history, it would seem.
She doesn't know the Civil War existed.
She doesn't know that Hitler was such kind of a bad guy, really, overall. So
Wait,
she
you're joking,
really needs
right?
No, she really needs to go to school on that.
Oh,
Okay.
that's a major gap.
Yeah.
Guys, I have a discussion topic for you.
Okay.
It's the topic I call black box tech.
Oh, boy.
So the idea is that as any particular technology advances, the accessibility of that technology to the average person gets less and less and less until eventually it converges on just a black box.
Right.
Where we have no idea like what's going on. Like for
Right, like
example,
this.
Like this. Well, this is
Something in, magic out.
yes. Like that. That's a perfect example. But let's start with cars, right?
Yes.
50 years ago, I'm led to understand that it was not uncommon for just an average person to tinker with his own car on the weekend or whatever. And I personally knew people growing up who always had a car halfway built in their driveway. You know what I mean?
Right, up on
They could,
blocks or whatever.
Yeah, they could take the engine apart, put it back together. They worked on their own car. But as car technology has progressed, that's getting less and less. I'm not saying there's nobody out there who could do that, but right now, if you really want to be able to work on a new car, you need fancy equipment and computer diagnostics, and you just can't tinker with your
It's
own
all
car.
ball bearings now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost, and to me, as somebody, I'm not a mechanic or anything, but I sort of have an average person's working knowledge. I know what the carburetor is, the oil goes in there and whatever.
Pistons, right.
But now it's
It's chips. It's computer chips.
I know
Yeah,
it's
a lot
it
of
is.
yeah.
But even
I have no idea what's going on.
But if you pop the hood on a new car, a lot of times you can't even see the engine anymore. You have
Yeah.
to take things out just to get to the point where you're starting to see the top of the
I
engine.
was happy.
Japanese engines, they've turned them sideways. To
Yeah.
fit. I have a new Honda Fit that I got, and you open the trunk, the front, the hood, and the engine's crammed into the space like this.
Yeah. And it's
you
on a
just
big
go-
shock absorber. You ever start the engine, you see the whole engine
Oh yeah,
do that?
It's
Yeah.
on its side, and it's it's like that, and I couldn't even begin. I don't know what's what.
Yep.
That's washer fluid. Okay, I got that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
I was speaking to a guy just the other day who used to maintain his own car, do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 65 years old, but he can't do it anymore. He
Yeah.
said that it's impossible. He doesn't have the equipment. He doesn't have the the hookups for the
Specialized
computers.
garments,
And you go to buy the screwdriver set to undo some of these things. They'll make special screwdrivers that only fit certain models of cars or brands of cars and stuff, and you have to spend $1,000 for a screwdriver set to fit that specific
That blows my
brand
mind.
of car. So
Oh, wow.
they've made it sort of inaccessible.
It's all
now.
proprietary.
Is it
to the
because
individual.
secondary markets now are another source of income for these companies, so they know that you have to take your car to a licensed dealer who's going to fix it, or the licensed garage is going to deal it, and they get a piece of that action? Or is it because the technology just gets more and more efficient and more better designed,
Much more better.
much more better designed? Is it both? Which is driving it? Is it the money's driving it? Probably the money's driving it.
I think it's probably just the technology's driving it. I just think, I think that's the low energy state, right? If the technologies are evolving like that, it would take work and collaboration to keep every company from having their own proprietary tool set. And they don't care enough not to do that
Yeah.
because
Right.
maybe there is some secondary gain. So why make the effort just to gimp themselves, some possible source of income?
You're the thing, the TV, for example. There is a TV repair shop in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Which
Still?
I'm who is going?
Oh, wow.
It's a typewriter and TV repair shop.
The
And I'm
typewriter.
it's
Really?
been open since I was in college back in '93.
Yeah.
I'm how is this place?
Well, you-
TVs are another good example.
Yeah, it
TV is
is.
a perfect example where you just I think they just want you to throw it out and get another one.
Oh, we definitely,
Nowadays,
the disposable economy
Disposable
without, so this topic came up
Planned
because
obsolescence.
I had built my own computer, and I bought George. You and I had this experience when we were editing the Happy video for last year's TAM, and my computer just went zounch. Yeah, and that was like the.
This is going great.
It just totally just shut off, right? So I went through the basic checklist. I'm like, okay, maybe the fans weren't working properly, and the motherboard got too hot, and it's supposed to shut itself off. Right. And I have been debugging that for a year.
Yeah,
I've replaced every component
twice,
a couple of times over.
Is it the same
Something's
computer,
going on now. I've built a handful of computers in my life. I get every component. I understand how motherboards work. I understand a lot of things about this. It's nothing is strange to me. But there is some type of monster in that machine, and I can't figure out what's shutting my computer down. So I tell Steve, I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just wasting time now, and my time is worth more than the cost of this computer at this point. I think, Steve's like, well, just bring it to a local shop. I'm like, I don't even think they exist anymore. Like, I looked up some local shops.
Yeah.
Really?
Then, how do I know they know what they're doing?
Right.
That's the other thing. I'm gonna hand them a $2,000 computer that was a rig built for video editing, with 4 hard drives in it.
And lots of porn probably, right?
Well, don't even get me started. But what do you think that was on a hard drive? But the idea is I don't even feel safe about doing that. I don't feel comfortable handing over my PC to a company like that.
So
what
computers are a good example because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would routinely crack open my computers, upgrade them. You know what I mean? It was. I
switch out boards and stuff.
Yeah, switch out boards. Pretty much. We got
the bugs.
And that's just getting less and less, common and likely, and so you end up with something like an iPad, right? No one's cracking open their iPad. I mean, I'm sure there are. I'm sure now you're at the really rarefied hacker level before you're cracking open an iPad. I would never dream of cracking open a device like that, or even just like your average laptop. I've never upgraded a laptop.
Yeah.
Nope, some people do, but
you could swap a hard drive.
Maybe you could swap a hard drive.
Yeah, hard drive.
Desktops,
battery.
I still would, but even desktops. Like now, I mean, we have the desktops running our console are these tiny little things like that. George, that's our desktop.
Yeah.
It's like these mini. Why would you bother going in there?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's literally a black box. It's literally a black box. Why would you crack it open? So where's it going to be in 10 years? So you see, it goes from the average user being able to tinker to the exceptional user to you really need to be like a licensed repairman to throw it away and get a new one. I mean, it's really the engineers at the company know how it works, and that's about it.
Or how about in the future, you give the black box to your advanced computer, and the robot will take it apart. Like, here you go, it's all set here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it might get to the point where it's not even humans anymore who are the only ones who are able to really understand the tech. But
or to the point where humans can't understand the tech at all.
They won't need to because these things will repair themselves. I read an article recently about how Audi Corporation is experimenting with technology in which a car gets in a little fender bender itself. They want the car to be able to fix itself.
Like Christine.
Well, not exactly, but yes.
Without the demon, though. Yeah.
Also, change color. You can have a red car one day and a blue car the next day.
But I think it's just part. It's part of the arc of things that are going to happen here. Whereas technology becomes more nuanced, smaller, more powerful, the average user won't be able to be a part of fixing things and everything. However, now with 3D printing, I think we're going to start seeing people making their own stuff, being able to do things that we've never done before. Like maybe you could download lots of schematics for 3D printing, and you can then start to combine things. Another cool thing that's happening, Google is building a modularized phone, where you have like a piece of plastic that you would be bolting on. Here's my battery space. Here's the type of camera I want my phone to have. Here's the different components that you want, and then you replace them as they get old or whatever. But you're right, Steve. We're not gonna be fixing our auto driving, self-driving cars,
right?
And tinkering with that kind of stuff in your garage.
Does this lead to the big civilization crash like that?
That's my next question. Is if you forget about individual technologies on this arc, are we on this broader meta arc culturally, technologically, where the people are getting more and more and more narrow in their expertise. We have less and less working knowledge of the everyday items around us, and we're going to get to the point that we're immersed in a technology that nobody really understands. We're just users, and we're completely dependent on the technology. And if the lights ever go out, we don't know anything. We have no practical skills, because I know how to. Like, I often have considered how effective would I be if I were thrown into medieval Europe or completely non-technological space as a physician.
Can you make sandwiches?
Could you make? Yeah, I would be the sandwich maker.
The first thing that popped into my head is, how am I going to brush my teeth?
Yeah, but think about it, I'm a physician. I'm a trained physician. I have decades of expertise. Could I even function? I can't order an MRI scan. I can't order lab work. I could do an exam. But there's some you have to almost be trained.
Set a bone if you had to.
I've never done it. I have put shoulders back into sockets, though.
Oh, you could deliver a baby.
Could deliver a baby. I've delivered my own baby. Delivered my second.
Yeah, but you could do all that stuff. I don't know if I have any skills.
But 99% of my knowledge would be instantly worthless.
It gets even more basic than that. Think about food. 150 years ago, you grew your own food, folks. I mean, you went to the farmer's market and you traded for other food. Today, if most people had to rely on making their own food to live, forget it.
That's interesting too, Ev. I wonder. I don't know the stats on this, but the whole locally grown thing. A lot of with modern shipping. We're getting apples from South America here in the United States, and all that stuff. There might not even be farms around us like there used to be. There probably isn't.
There already isn't.
There's housing in all
Connecticut.
that space now.
Connecticut used to be mostly farmland, and now it's mostly not.
Yeah. Even if those farms are then automated by a machine which waters and picks and processes the stuff, and then that generation dies out that knew how to pick and process. I mean, we'll get to the point where our progeny won't know how to boil water, won't understand what's involved. You know what I mean? What's the line then?
Yeah, but you're talking about technology advancing, but there's other components to that technological advancement. Say, for example, intelligence augmentation. Sure, at some point we'll become super specialized, and you might understand this in a sea of technology that you won't understand. But if there are things like intelligence augmentation, then you could potentially understand a vast majority of that kind of stuff, right?
Neo and say okay, download building a fire.
I know Kung Fu.
I know how to deliver a baby.
We are far away from that. We are far away from that.
Of course,
but that is something that I think will happen eventually.
But if that processor, which is driving that Kung Fu download thing into your brain, breaks down, because there's an asteroid hits the planet or something, you know what I mean? If the source for that energy, which is driving the machinery, which is letting us be able to download whatever we need to know to be able to make pancakes, if that's out, we're screwed. Already the planet's screwed. Already, if there's some major, let's say a huge solar flare were to happen, and were to burn out the power grid, which is totally possible.
Sure, it's happening now. If my wife isn't home, there are no pancakes.
How do you?
I'm already living that.
Crying, But I mean,
Stone Age.
One big solar event wipes out the grid. Yeah. And how long would it take to get back to where we are today? Would it take 5 years, a decade? Would it take?
And how much collateral damage in the meantime?
This is even worse. It's even worse. I'll give you. I must have said this many times because it is a scary idea. There's proprietary information all mixed in throughout humanity. So, as an example, there are companies that have a process that they do something, and that company is one of a few that has a process to do that thing, and that company passes along its knowledge to its employees,
Coca-Cola.
right? So if we go the recipe's gone forever.
Very important.
No, they're important things.
Sure.
Things like when they build a transformer. There's not that many factories that build these gigantic transformers, and it would take. We were talking about if the grid went down, it could take a decade for us to get those factories back up in line. But there are people that if they're gone, the knowledge is gone.
Yeah.
There's
gone.
Institutional knowledge.
That's it.
There's institutional knowledge. There's cultural knowledge. So even in medicine, right? I mean, most of the really important knowledge is not in textbooks. It's in the experts. And if you lose them, you lose their expertise. You can't reconstruct it from reading the textbooks. You can get maybe halfway there, but you can't really get the expertise.
This is why we have to. No. We really do need to, and this is probably never going to happen or whatever, but it would be awesome if we were able to put all human knowledge into artificial intelligence of some kind to stitch it all together and preserve it. Someday.
Beyond the internet.
But you think like Walking Dead level societal collapse, they're screwed. I mean, it's gone.
Yeah.
It is interesting. How long would it take? I often thought about that because they do have a leg up because they do have a lot of the knowledge is there in books and stuff. So they're not starting from scratch. They don't have to necessarily reinvent everything. But given you're thrown into a society. Let's say they achieve some kind of political stability, security, whatever. Or everything's good, and now they're in their reconstruction phase. They have to rebuild society, and they have what they have. A dramatically reduced population. Some people even may be born after the collapse and have no pre-collapse knowledge. How quickly could they get back to where we were just on the remnants of knowledge that's out there?
I'm sure it'd be quicker, but there would be things.
Would it take 100 years, 1,000 years?
There would probably be things that would never be the same level again.
Centuries.
Like particle physics, for example, right? Like we know people that have these skill sets.
Or like theoretical physics.
Theoretical physicists, right?
Yeah.
Like how long would it take?
We could survive without theoretical physics. I mean, that's
yeah.
It's too bad. It's too bad we didn't have.
It's an embellishment. Invest their time and effort into studying that when there's so many more cool.
Something practical.
Something practically actually.
But
it's so boring too.
It's completely.
What's the point?
Completely.
If someone were in the room that could answer some of these questions for me, it might be useful. Mm-hmm. Like Brian Weck.
What? The Brian Weck. What? Wait a minute.
We have a chair for you, Brian.
You brought
our second instrument. Yes, Brian Weck. We were obviously joking about theoretical physicists.
Of course we were. We were partially joking about the physicists.
I appreciate you guys insulting my intelligence.
You should have heard what you said before you came.
This man needs a microphone. We're getting you a mic.
You might?
Okay, I am not mic.
Oh, you'll need a microphone.
He's off camera.
You'll need a microphone.
Just sign language. Tell us a microphone.
You need to slide.
There you
Slide
go.
over.
Now you're
Sign or charades.
locked
You
in.
need to slide over.
Like Johnny Flynn.
Isn't this?
Well, while Brian's getting mic'd.
I want to ask Brian before we lose our track because we were doing it and I wasn't kidding here.
Okay.
Brian,
Yep.
if every single person that has your level of knowledge died, and with the books that were left over,
Like in my specific field.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, so tell everyone what you are, just so everyone knows what I'm talking
I'm
about.
a theoretical particle physicist. I work on particle physics, string theory, and basically I do speculative mathematical models of the universe at its smallest scales.
How long would it take? So Walking Dead happens.
Yeah.
Now they get rid of the zombies and they're actually rebuilding humanity. And now they start cracking open books and whatever. Maybe they get some computers running or whatever. But there's nobody that has your level of knowledge alive anymore. It's just regular people. How long would it take to get
So
that?
they're starting from essentially zero?
Just books and maybe some computers that were left over and stuff like that.
Libraries.
Journals and
Remedies.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
no experts. Experts are all dead. And now they're trying to rebuild that expertise from what was left behind in recording.
If there's a couple, well, there are lots of great textbooks, of course. To get up to the really latest stuff, that probably would take a long time because, for example, the LHC is collecting data and you'd have to build another LHC, right? Assuming that the zombies ate the current one.
They ate it?
Yeah, they live in it now. They're walking around a 27-mile tunnel.
Particle.
But the fact is that there wouldn't be anyone like you to teach the next generation, right? So they'd have to read things that would be inherently super complicated that they wouldn't understand.
And one thing that I think that makes that even more problematic now, so you guys know the archive, right? Which is a preprint server where pretty much all the papers in particle physics come out these days. So when I write a paper, actually, the first place I put it is not in a journal, but it's on this preprint server where every morning, if you're a particle physicist, you look at it, and then there you see your papers for the day, and you say, oh, that one looks interesting, that one doesn't.
You laugh at a lot of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's there's no peer review on the archive, so you can, in principle, people are very, very careful about it, because that's what everyone reads. It's your whole career at stake, but there's no peer review, and things can be wrong. Sure. And that's why I think we have sort of a problem in some sense. Overall, the system works. The papers on it, I think, are generally right, and the field works great. But let's say a paper is discovered to be wrong. This happens all the time. It's science, right? You put something out, and then something comes up later, and people say, oh, yeah, there was a mistake in that. there's no real effective way just on the archive of, unless people are going to withdraw their paper, which people generally don't do. Even when it's sort of widely known that the paper is wrong, there's no real effective way aside from this oral tradition of, hey, don't read that paper because I know that's wrong for this kind of complicated and subtle reason. There's no way that information has been preserved.
So then if they found that, there's a slew of misinformation or old information that they would be think is right, and then, I mean, it could take, exactly. Wouldn't you think 100 years of picking up the pieces to get back
Probably
to
not
today?
far from, just based on textbooks. Let's say, I think you can do pretty well. Let's say you could learn quantum mechanics really well, right? And quantum mechanics was pretty well established, by the 30s or so. To get to the current level, probably about 100.
So think about how much misinformation is in print.
Right.
And not in your archive, but in other archives. If some civilization was going to start building,
Let me give you an example from medicine. So what I consider to be a crank is somebody who has access to, on PubMed now or whatever, access to the medical literature, can sort of read it and make some kind of sense of it. Maybe they even have some kind of background, but they can't really put it into perspective. So they think they're being science-based and evidence-based, but they're hopelessly lost in the weeds because they just have they weren't taught clinical judgment, how to really, what's meaningful and what isn't meaningful, and so they come out with this elaborate crank nonsense. So in essence, everyone would basically be a crank, because they're just, they would get lost in the weeds of what information they could find, but they don't have anybody to teach them how to make real sense of it.
Yeah, and I find the more I've done physics, the way I think about physics, the way I approach problems is more, when you get down to it, you're doing the calculations, but the initial kind of guess about what might work and what might not is based on, at this point for me, 20 years of intuition, which is not really transmittable in any easy fashion. It's just from working with people who have been in the field for a long time, and then
that's what gets
I
lost.
pass that on to students. That's exactly what.
Do you think there would be ages like Stone Age, Bronze Age, sped up? But that you would have if civilization were to fall apart?
I think there would be different ages. I don't think it would recapitulate what's already happened because there would be this hybrid because, because we have some knowledge already there.
Yeah.
I think knowledge of how to smelt iron and make steel, that would probably be pretty easily smelting. Would be reconstituted just from reading the technical.
So that could be like 6 months.
Yeah,
have Iron Age for whatever 6 months, and then,
and then last month.
But we may not even have an Iron Age. It may just be they may go right to
Platinum Age,
or would it just be this like a weird recycling?
Yeah,
no one would smelt anymore.
Yeah,
but you would just be able to recycle
the scavenging age.
Scavenging age. Scavenging age.
It'd be different ages. Yeah, it'd be interesting. All right, we're going to go to a sort of news item.
Literally almost flew in my mouth.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, be careful. There's a lot of ladybugs.
A lot of ladybugs. A lot of good luck floating around.
Okay,
flying proteins.
So, 25 years of the Hubble.
Oh, yes. Amazing, right?
Yeah. Hubble.
Which started as a joke.
Yeah, well, it started as
a punchline.
No, it was a punchline. It was horrific. I was almost crying.
I didn't know about this.
Tell us
what happened.
No, we will tell the story because I remember the story very acutely, partly because the lens was made in Danbury, which is
that's right.
Oh, really?
Grade 7.
But, I didn't know that. Yeah, so Hubble was a lot of hype with this space telescope. You're going to put it in orbit. It's going to have better pictures than we've ever seen before. They get it up there, and I remember reading this long story about how they made the lens to this incredible specification. They get it up there, and it's out of focus.
It was a spherical aberration.
It was complete boondoggle. Oops. And then it took blurry pictures until they put a fix.
They put contact lenses on the
They had to put a fix up there to fix it.
I had a father of a friend of mine who was somewhat religious when this happened.
No, don't even say it.
Well, do you guess what he said?
It's the eyes of God that doesn't want us to peer into the deep universe.
He said it's a Tower of Babel.
Because that's what another friend said to me.
Yeah, that's actually what he said.
That's what he said.
He said this is just like the Tower of Babel.
I had other people express the same thing to me.
Oh, now we are.
This is God. This is God's way of saying
those are
really?
Those are Satan fixed it.
It wasn't the bottom line is because they didn't want to run this expensive test that would have detected the spherical aberration. So they're like, oh, it's good. We really don't want to spend all this money to confirm what we kind of know. And because they didn't do that test, it was it was a horror show.
It was a big local story. I mean, we built the lens that went up on the space shuttle. That oops, oh, never mind.
So how did they fix it? With other lenses, or
I think so. They just they had to adjust because there's multiple lenses in the system.
Just contact that they just got to like.
They had to replace one of the other lenses to exactly compensate for the aberrations in the big lens.
Am I remembering correctly that they brought parts up on the shuttle?
Yes, they did. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Many shuttles.
That was a major repair. That repair
the
was
Hubble was
big.
brought up on the shuttle.
Right, and then all the fixes as well.
Yeah. All right, so we got a slideshow of pictures, the best pictures from the Hubble.
That is an amazing.
There's nothing better than this.
Now you would never see that with the naked eye.
No.
That's all computer enhanced. No, I mean that's a computer enhanced picture that the Hubble took to show the gases and all that stuff.
First
correct?
of all, pretty much every astronomical picture you have ever seen has been computer enhanced.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get
false
corrections.
it's false color and all sorts of
To
things.
see structure.
Yeah, I mean,
I hate thinking that. I hate every time I realize that because it just makes me think that if I did get out there, space would be so much more boring than I anticipated.
Well, some nebula are genuinely lit in some light source, and they do glow. So it's not like it would be invisible, but
no, but you would need a long exposure, right? I mean,
well,